So the anime was incredibly creepy, but given the massive backlash I had after calling the anime creepy, I was already planning on reading the manga, but boy, I definitely need to read the manga now. From the get-go, you get to see the style and uniqueness of the artwork and colors that this mangaka is able to instill in their work. This manga was incredibly influential during the early years of the internet while using this character for background wallpapers and profile pics. It delivers on that cute yet edgy vibe. There's something that it's just uniquely 2000s about how they're drawn, something about the style and the pose with some analog aspects that really drive it home, and I love how fashion and the outfits are a detail that's focused on with these josei mangas. Funny enough, when Ritsuka is transferred to his new school, he actually puts on a show with his mood. He's smiling and pretending everything is alright. It's only really with Yuiko does he become aloof and distant, which I think is so much better because it shows that level of forced maturity where he knows that all he really has to do is keep the adults calm and thinking everything is alright. A bit of recap for those of you that didn't watch my video covering the anime: Soubi, the 20-year-old friend of Ritsuka's dead brother, waits for him outside the school, and this is how they first meet each other. And Ritsuka is naively very trusting of Soubi from the get-go, and go on a date together. And Soubi kisses Ritsuka, and obviously Ritsuka is super weirded out by this, and Ritsuka is all like, "Bro, are you trying to get with me? What the fuck?" And Soubi's response, and I quote, "Ahem, I couldn't get hard for a child, but if this goes the route of the anime, it'll be harder and harder to believe those words." When they get into their first spell battle, what the manga does significantly better is hint at Soubi's motives. And what I mean by that is, Soubi is telling Ritsuka that he loves him and that he'll protect him, not necessarily because he wants to seduce him, but because Ritsuka is vulnerable to the people coming after him and needs to manipulate Ritsuka into staying close to Soubi in order to protect him. Being able to read more of their thoughts really helps understand these characters better. In spell battles, you have a fighter and a sacrifice. The sacrifice takes the damage while the fighter throws the spells. Typically, two people who share the same true name fight together. Ritsuka's true name is Loveless, while Soubi's true name is Beloved. Originally, Ritsuka's brother was named Beloved, and Soubi worked with him before Seimei died. Soubi and Ritsuka have different true names, which is seen as blasphemous with the spell fighters. But Soubi has no other choice in order to protect Ritsuka. Spell battles don't really have any motive behind it, and what I mean is they don't really give an explanation as to why these spell battles are in any way better than just throwing a punch. They have an entire school for training fighters in these spell battles, but they never explain the importance of these sort of spell battles. Let's say with Yu-Gi-Oh, they don't throw punches, they have card games. Why? Because it's a tournament, and two, it's an ancient Egyptian, game that they played, so it ties directly with the pharaoh's character. We don't even get, a passive explanation as for why the spell battles are a thing. Ritsuka apparently had a personality switch 2 years ago, where once he was very extroverted, now he's incredibly introverted. And he goes to therapy for this problem, which it kind of sounds like just a normal response to having your brother die, but he literally can't remember anything prior to 2 years ago. Thus is why he has an identity crisis, thinking that this version of himself isn't the real Ritsuka. It's not necessarily a case of multiple personalities, but really a response to his mom abusing him as she's gone into hysterics after her son died. They had flashbacks of Seimei fixing up Ritsuka after she abused him, so we know Ritsuka's personality shifted before Seimei was killed. Funny enough, they really don't explore this concept. It's present, and it's more of a tool that they use against the mom, and just to explain why the mom is abusive, but they don't really use the change in Ritsuka's personality as a concrete way to develop his character. Finding Seimei's will, Ritsuka finds out that his brother was killed by an unknown organization called Septimal Moon, and Seimei commanded Soubi to protect and love Ritsuka if Seimei were to die. And Ritsuka is thoroughly frustrated by this, and Soubi finding loving Ritsuka so easy, but Ritsuka can't see how you can just love someone on command. He feels like nothing is truly his own. Soubi isn't truly his, neither is his mom anymore, and he doesn't have a brother. When they fight, Soubi seems desperate to kiss Ritsuka, which initially sounds creepy, but in the manga they hint at their supposed connection being the source of Soubi's power, which is why he's so keen on deepening his relationship with Ritsuka. I mean, it's still creepy, but at least it it makes more sense, Soubi is even distraught at the thought that he has to begin Ritsuka's training. Like, this isn't something he necessarily wants to do. Side note, Soubi's roommate is way hotter in the manga. I thought he was a girl when I first read this years ago. Ritsuka can't find any more information on Septimal Moon or who killed his brother, and when he asks Soubi what he knows about the subject, all he says is that he has orders from, quote, higher up, that he can't answer questions pertaining to Septimal Moon. You know what I think is a great summary of Ritsuka's character, and something that was completely overlooked in the anime? When Yuiko brought jam for Ritsuka and was bullied because of it, after Ritsuka stood up for her, he said that he believes it's worse to hurt someone's feelings than to hurt their body. Like, that's such a quick and easy summary of how Ritsuka thinks of their trauma, and how he's clearly optimal for being a sacrifice during the fights. Honestly, I'm barely breaking the surface of the manga, and the vibe is radically different from the anime. First of all, in the anime, stuff just kind of happens. In the manga, there's actually explanations as to why there's new fighters coming after Ritsuka and Soubi. There's transitions between what's going on. And Soubi doesn't seem nearly as creepy in the manga as he does in the anime. In fact, there's even times when he feels he doesn't seem like he actually wants to train Ritsuka. And what I'm really saying is the anime sucked. The anime is a very poor adaptation of this story. During the fight, where fighters from Septimal Moon offer the letter as a reward for beating them, you actually see Ritsuka taking the initiative to kiss Soubi, as this was when he's finally starting to develop the resolve to do what he has to in order to learn about his brother's murder, and inside the letter is a seemingly random code. During the fight, Soubi's name, the one marked on his neck, started bleeding, and when Ritsuka treats him after the fight, Soubi explains that it started bleeding because he was going against his name without much other explanation. Now the Zeros, the two male Zeros, the ones that are artificially made fighters from the school Soubi came from. When they first appear, they actually use their power to entrap Ritsuka's teacher, and they're a whole new level of weird, because they tell her, I quote, "We were thinking that it was about time we got rid of our ears," which in this world, having cat ears means you're a virgin. So that's just a very quick and easy way for me to hate them. That got dark fast, and they kind of just have like a personality change after that. They never seem to like really want to deliver on that threat. Thus, Soubi steps in to stop the Zeros, and Soubi doesn't want Ritsuka fighting with him because the Zeros are way more powerful than the Ritsuka can handle, and so Soubi takes them on alone, regardless of being at a massive disadvantage. Also, remember the part in the anime when I mentioned how Soubi is stalking Ritsuka on his little friend date? It is radically different in the manga. There is no part where Ritsuka and Yuiko look like they're kissing. Soubi never gets insanely jealous. He just follows him up until the Ferris wheel because he just wants to ride the Ferris wheel with him. That's the end of it. Why did they make it so much worse in the anime? After saving the teacher from the Zeros, in the anime, Soubi says that he wants to be, quote, dominated by Ritsuka, but in the manga, what he really says is, specifically, all I need is one person who will dominate me completely. Which almost sounds the same, but not quite. The difference is that, one, he doesn't say Ritsuka specifically. He says he needs someone, who is no doubt supposed to be Ritsuka, but the nebulousness of how it's worded makes it seem like it doesn't necessarily need to be him. Second, he says he needs one person to dominate him, not wants someone to dominate him, which makes it sound like his meaning of dominate isn't necessarily a sexual one, though the intention of the author making it a double entendre is very obvious. I think this is way more akin to the flashback of his teacher whipping him during training rather than anything sexual. And the reason he's such a jerk to the teacher is because he doesn't want her getting mixed up with the whole Septimal Moon problem that they're dealing with. I can't really say for certain if him being dominated is sexual or not, since it's still nebulous, but I'm holding out hope that it's not actually sexual. We reach the point where Ritsuka finds out the meaning of the letter he got from Septimal Moon and how it's actually instructions to reach a specific room in a video game. Once he reaches the level and meets the angel that somehow knows it's Ritsuka, they start answering some of his questions, like the angel being from Septimal Moon, who are the ones that killed Seimei. But this angel is not the one that killed Seimei, which doesn't do much good to answer his questions. He also learned Septimal Moon is a total of 6 people. There wasn't any weird incense that drugged Ritsuka like in the anime. I think that was just to allude to more plot and get people interested in the manga. I think they knew there wasn't going to be any more seasons. Really what happens is that Ritsuka actually just falls asleep and disconnects since he's been playing the game for several hours. And Soubi kisses him in his sleep. I'm still gonna point out when the guy is creepy. I don't care what you guys say. Also, we know the angel was an actual woman from Septimal Moon, and whoever this is was the player controlling the angel. Ritsuka is almost certain that Seimei was a member of Septimal Moon and was murdered by his own friends. Now he just needs to understand why, and it's now that the lesbians are introduced. They kind of jumbled it around in the anime, and then they fight. Soubi, again, fighting alone, and he gets his butt handed to him. The addition of the zeros are interesting given that all zeros have the same true name, Zero. They're technically all interchangeable with each other. Any sacrifice can go with any fighter and vice versa. But even with their universal compatibility, they still manage to find a deep connection with a specific zero and refuse to give them up, even going so far as to defect entirely or just die if they have to change partners, showing us that there are some people that may be destined to be together, but there are also people that will choose who they want to be together with, and it's that choice that makes it truly special. Or at least that's what I would say, but apparently the lesbians, and I refer to them as lesbians because there's like 2 groups of zeros, and so I'm separating them using the term lesbians because it's easier to just keep them in order in your head, my head, our head. I'm just trying to keep the characters straight. Then again, if they were straight, they wouldn't be lesbians. Apparently the lesbians talk to Ritsuka about the idea of like chosen lovers. And even though they're both zeros, they still believe in the concept of like fated lovers. Like love at first sight, that sort of thing. Chosen by destiny. And it's actually Ritsuka who fights back and says that he wants to be able to choose who he loves, not have it be chosen for him. So it's kind of a little backwards. After Ritsuka and the zeros get Soubi back home, also Soubi is housing the zeros since they defected and don't have anywhere to go. The zeros start grilling Ritsuka about how him and Soubi aren't bonded, and Ritsuka decides that he's sick of not understanding what to do and Soubi having to do the heavy lifting during the fights, so he asks them to teach him how to control his fighter. Now, he won't be the chained-up femboy Pokemon, he'll be the chained-up Pokemon Master. Apparently, Soubi was trained to give himself entirely to whoever controls him, which is partially why he acts the way he does. He was the exact same with Seimei back when he was alive. It's like he needs to be controlled or he's just lost. They also tell him that there should be someone else that has the name Loveless, and whoever that is, they need to find them. They're apparently supposed to be drawn together naturally. $10 on Yuiko. Apparently, Nagisa, this woman who's in charge of creating zeros, and Soubi's unnamed old teacher are in some sort of competition to create the best fighter. Well, mostly Nagisa wants to create zeros that can beat the teacher's students. She even refers to Soubi as the teacher's jack, like the poker card. The lesbians come to fight, and the zeros decide to fight them and protect Soubi, and with barely any effort, they manage to defeat them. But now we get to see what they mean by domination. And it's, domination. Yowza. Time for Soubi and Ritsuka to fight the lesbians. During the fight, Yamato, the blonde one, can clearly feel pain, and her partner, Koya, starts to notice. Apparently, during a coffee date with Yamato and Ritsuka, Ritsuka noticed that she reacted to the heat of the coffee that spilled on her, meaning she was losing her abilities as a zero. Even Yamato knew she was changing and didn't know why. Now, during the fight, Koya stops to check on Yamato's name that's supposed to be carved into her body, but it's no longer there. So they forfeit the battle. And it's here that we see them choose who they want to love, regardless of their names no longer matching. It's their experience and their bond that they've created that's important. And in this moment, they decided to choose each other. Instead, they choose to form a bond stronger than their name. After the fight, Soubi explains to Ritsuka the importance of bonds they keep talking about. The bond isn't just two people having the same name. It's a connection that's so ingrained in their sacrifice and fighter that one literally cannot live without the other. If one dies, the other usually chooses to give up their life rather than live without them, which is supposed to be really to reflect Soubi without Seimei. I think this is really him trying to tell Ritsuka that Soubi is dead inside and in a constant state of suffering. Ritsuka goes back into the video game to talk to that one angel from Septimal Moon, but now they ask him to recount his memory of Seimei, and he talks about how fond he is of his brother and how he always helped him and protected him. But the angel tells him that Seimei was in Septimal Moon. He was a completely different person. He was obsessive compulsive, never touched anyone, never slept. Now the question is, which one is the real Seimei? Then the angel explains that the entire reason she wanted to talk to Ritsuka is because they believe Seimei might still be alive, and they're trying to lure Seimei out of hiding. Soubi, however, tells Ritsuka that Seimei is dead, and since he's been ordered not to lie to Ritsuka, he doesn't believe that's a lie. He truly believes Seimei is dead. Seemingly out of nowhere, Ritsuka's mom gets a call from someone saying that Ritsuka is out of the house when he's not supposed to be. His mom calls him and tells him to come home, where she proceeds to brutally punish him. And when asked how she found out that he wasn't home, she tells him that it was Seimei who called her and told her that Ritsuka was gone. And Ritsuka gets a call from someone operating under Septimal Moon to come meet him. Who knows what his mother really heard? More randos they gotta fight, but while they're gone, a stranger comes to their house telling the mom that he's Seimei. She's so desperate for Seimei to come home, she just believes him. And this guy is trying, and failing, to convince her to kill Ritsuka. Apparently, this guy is taking orders from Seimei, but why would Seimei want Ritsuka killed? Especially by his own mother. Unbeknownst to Ritsuka and Soubi, Seimei is apparently alive. He's hiding out at some sort of retirement home where he's giving orders to people around him to spy on Ritsuka and keep tabs on him. Back home, it seems like that man working under Seimei got through to the mom somewhat. She doesn't want to kill Ritsuka, but she did tie him to a chair and called him in sick from school. She's actually scared Ritsuka is going to be killed if she isn't there to protect him. Thankfully, Soubi is able to find the weird guy and confronts him. And just to mess with Soubi, he calls Seimei, just so that Soubi can hear his voice, letting him know that Seimei really is alive. And with this phone call, we find out that Seimei is seemingly bonded with this strange guy named Nisei, and it's how he talks to him that's indicative of Seimei's personality. He tells Nisei, "I'm not your sacrifice, you're my fighter." Like, he needs to be the one in control, the one who possesses the other. You're telling me Seimei is cheating on Soubi with another man? Soubi comes to untie and save Ritsuka, but he's clearly broken inside, even going so far as to ask Ritsuka if they can just run away together, just to get away from everything. So Yoji and Natsuo, the Zeros, got a call from Nagisa saying they can come home, and so they just leave. Ritsuka doesn't know anything else to do other than to talk to Septimal Moon directly in order to get answers. So they take a car, and he tells Soubi to take him to someone named Gora. Also, Kyo, Soubi's friend, decides to tag along because he's sick of not having any development. Guess who else decided to show up? Seimei and Nisei, and they attack Kyo so that they can use him as bait. We do learn that Seimei does also have an obsession with Ritsuka, saying that he only wants Ritsuka to love him and no one else. And when Nisei goes to start wreaking havoc at Septimal Moon, that's when he tells him that his true name is Beloved, just like Soubi's, and that Nisei is working as Seimei's fighter. Now Ritsuka knows Seimei is really alive. So there's 3 beloveds. Is this like a weird throuple that's falling apart? According to Nisei, Seimei carved the name Beloved into Soubi, and that Soubi's true name isn't really Beloved, he's just a fake, and Seimei broke him as part of his obsession with control. Seimei and Nisei have the name Beloved in the same part of their body, showing that what he's saying is true. When Soubi was still in Septimal Moon, it turns out what the teacher was really doing was creating a blank. Someone that has no name, a blank where any name can be inscribed and used as a replacement fighter, and Seimei expressly asked for Soubi. To Seimei, he believes love strays and wavers, but domination, pure and utter devotion, is the only thing that truly holds. They managed to defeat Nisei, and not once during the entire battle did Seimei come to help him. They find Seimei cornered in the library, and now that Ritsuka knows Seimei is alive, how he lied about his death and abandoned him, and every terrible thing he's done to Soubi, he still can't help but be happy to see his brother again. The first thing Seimei does is try to convince Ritsuka to join him, or at the very least to accept him for the monster that he is, that loving someone, regardless of who they are, is true love. And that's the love that Seimei showed Ritsuka, so that's the love he wants in return. But Ritsuka knows what he's doing is wrong, and so even though Ritsuka is conflicted, he tells Seimei that he's not on his side, that even though he cares a lot for Seimei, he also cares for Soubi, and Seimei hurts Soubi in a way that he can't overlook. Soubi tries to fight back against Seimei, but Soubi is broken on the inside. He's used to being controlled, and he still belongs to Seimei, so even though he tries, he still fails. Soubi is conditioned to belong to others, not himself, and Seimei uses the distraction to escape through the window, vanishing from their lives yet again. Okay, I'm now 8 volumes in, and it is such a slog to read this story. The groomer vibes are definitely less in the manga. They're still present, but the story in the manga is just mediocre. They haven't explained why they do spell battles. I thought it'd be something along the lines of, oh, Ritsuka's too weak in order to fight these people, so I'll teach him spell battles so that he actually has like a even footing and a fighting chance, but they don't even give that sort of explanation. I can't wrap my head around why they wouldn't just throw a punch, which we've seen them do, and we have heard them threaten before. Like, they are very okay with that concept. It's not like a taboo. They do it too. The spell battles really do nothing other than separate it from being a shonen manga. Honestly, the spell battle thing is like the biggest hang up I have with this whole story. If they gave any explanation whatsoever, I don't care how good or bad the explanation is, any explanation whatsoever, the story would go from mediocre to sort of kind of good. Soubi's character got better. I remember during like the big Twitter backlash I had, there was someone who said that Loveless is a story about love in all its forms, and I heavily disagree with that. I would think a lot of the fans of Loveless would also disagree with that. Soubi and Ritsuka's relationship is just a toxic codependency. And his brother is even worse. Soubi's motivations make sense now. I still don't like him, but at least it makes sense now. He isn't at a point where I can say that he's a good character. He's just not as bad as the anime made him out to be. I would be interested in seeing where Soubi's character would go if I didn't have to struggle through this flip-flopping plot. What is the importance of the school and the battle system? When are we going to learn anything about what Septimal Moon is trying to do other than trying to kill Seimei? They're trying so hard to keep everything a mystery that there's never a payoff to any part of this story. The only interesting payoff we had to this mystery is finding out that Seimei is alive and that he's also probably the bad guy. This story feels like it's figuring itself out as it goes along. Guys, I know you have such a strong nostalgia for this show and for this manga. I need you to take your rose-colored glasses off. I know this was like the only BL manga we had back then, or you had back then. I wouldn't even call it a BL manga. It's barely even yaoi. But there's so much better things out there now, and there's no real reason to be defending this. Even for the time it was released, it wasn't good. It had a strong start, but after the initial hook, it just goes downhill. If you want a story about love in all its forms, I would argue like Bloom Into You delivers on that better. And I know that's not yaoi, sorry. But regardless, that's the first thing I can think of. What this manga does do right is actually delivering on the concept of loveless. I know I don't have any love for this story. During the Twitter backlash, I remember someone said something that actually rang true to me, is that Soubi and Ritsuka's relationship is that they're both supposed to be loveless in basically like every regard. thus is why, like, they're together. Thus is why, like, Soubi has this obsession with Ritsuka, because he sees himself in this kid. That just, it doesn't really seem like a setup for a romance story. And if it is, it's kind of not even a romance story. It's a weird mystery plot with, like, sprinklings of a 20-year-old kissing a 12-year-old, with them meeting other couples. It's not really a romance, and it's definitely not a setup for any happy ending, which doesn't necessarily have to have a happy ending. I get that, but if there is a deeper message, the mangaka is taking way too long setting it up. And I know I only said I read 8 volumes, and to any established reader of manga, that is a pitiful amount. And I'm fully aware of that. Honestly, I'm a little embarrassed I could only get through 8 volumes. But remember, in terms of ratios, like, you're thinking of 8 volumes out of, like, 35, which is what we're kind of used to. This is 8 volumes out of 13, so I'm, like, more than halfway through. I would argue it's more of an embarrassment for the mangaka that I could only get through 8 volumes, because that just shows that the writing was bad and couldn't keep my attention. And I'm very willing to struggle through a story, especially if I'm doing it for a review. So far, the majority of this story is just set up for something, don't know what it is. I realized I had to stop when I sat down to read volume 9, and during that day I had like 3 different distractions that I could have waited on, I could have put in the background, but I was tackling them because my brain would not let me read this manga. I wanted to do literally anything other than read this manga. This is going on my DNF list. I'm sorry. If you love Loveless, then please tell me in the comments why I should try and finish the manga. I heavily doubt I will. Or tell me in the comments if you agree with what I say. Subscribe if you're here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay beautiful and keep playing.